Hi everyone, I'm back again and back with ON1. Following on from last week's video and using the blur effect, I thought we might look at a different way we can use it. This way is to create a long exposure, or more that it's an image that looks like a long exposure but it isn't one. Now I know most of you have seen this image before that's here. It was taken when I was in Central Australia of the Kata, I think it's pronounced. And I've shown this photo before, and if I just get rid of the sky, you can see it was a beautiful blue sky that was in it. And I've just put this sky in and tried to make it look like it was a long exposure. Now, I do this sometimes. I mean, most of my images are real long exposures where I go out with my ND filters and I take, 1-2 minute exposures and I get the clouds going across the sky. But sometimes I just can't set it up, or I've gone out not intending to do any long exposures, and then I get out there and I discover that there is something that I wished I had done as a long exposure. So when I get back on the computer, this is the type of thing that I would do to it. We're not going to use this image because I've already done that. So let's take a look at a different image. Now, to do this in ON1, I've found, like, ON1 comes with lots and lots of skies and you can do all of that, but this is kind of a different type of step. And I've done videos before on how to replace the sky, but for this we need to put the sky there first. And we're just going to, because ON1 and the software I use for recording can make my laptop really slow. We're going to, these images are JPEGs and I've made them quite small, but they're okay to show you this. So now we need to put in the image that we want to replace the sky in. So I'm just going to press this, I suppose it's a plus sign, and we're going to add a layer. And this is the image here that we're going to use. So we're just going to go add layer. And there it is. So what I've discovered, and the easiest way to do this, is to go up here to the top menu across the top and click mask, or I can move this out of the way again. Mask sky. Don't worry, the thing I'm moving you can't see, it's the stuff for recording. And I mean, that's a fairly decent mask. Certainly worked a lot better than many of the other ways that I was trying to do it. Obviously, this is not really the ideal sky for this image because, there's lots of bright light. Over here you can see the sun is shining very strongly on this bit, whereas down the bottom there is no sun shining. And normally you should probably try and find a sky that matches your image. So the sun is in roughly the same place, or if it's a overcast day, probably not going to matter so much, but make sure the sky was taken on an overcast day and so was your foreground. Okay, so we need to go back to the sky. Ooh, we'll get there eventually. Okay, so now we're going to go down to effects. Now I haven't done anything to this image yet. We might do something at the end, and then we want add filter. So we're just going to go blur. And you can see it's already done a little bit of blurring. Radial would be fantastic for this because you can see radial does this. Let me make it a lot stronger. It goes out, and what photographer who does long exposures not want that kind of sky. But the problem is this here. And you can tell it's in the middle, and I haven't been able to work out how to move that from there, say, down to here, which would be so much better. So if anybody from ON1 ever watches this, I would like that. Or if there's a way of doing it, if you could please let me know. So we're going to go with motion, which is the same one that we used last week. So we're going to change the distance a bit, but we don't want it just going, you know, straight across the sky like this. So we're going to try changing the angle. I mean, you could have it going any way you wanted. I like it on a bit of an angle. That's my favorite. Maybe a bit more. Yeah, that's okay. Now, one thing that you might have noticed is this little bit over here, which means we need to work on the mask for the original image, because something's coming up there that shouldn't be there. We'll see if the mask comes up. We'll see if we can view it. So if we view the mask, you can see here, if there's more everywhere, but this one here really comes up. So we can probably just use, I'm using the mask brush, which apparently is just for using, and I've got it set on paint out, I believe. So we'll just get rid of all these things so it's completely black, which that looks fine. We'll go back to view, and there's the image. We might also, while we're in this layer, maybe we can just develop the image a little bit, add a bit of contrast. Maybe we can brighten it up a bit so it matches the sky a bit more. Just got to be careful we don't do it too much. Anyway, I'm not going to do any more to it than that. So that's one way that you can, with ON1, create your own long exposure type of image. If there's water in the image, that creates a different problem, and you don't generally get water that isn't a long exposure but the sky is. So something to think about. I do have some ideas about that radial blur effect, which we might look at in a different video, but I think for now I'm just going to leave it here, and I'm going to show you a couple of other images that I've done this with. Okay, so I'll see you next week. Bye.